Is bringing Loki back from the dead and adding more time travel going to hurt or help the MCU? Let's discuss. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and I've seen the first 2 episodes of Loki. I will not be spoiling them, although there's not much to spoil really in the first episode. The first episode is a lot of exposition about this world, about the TVA. I will explain some of that, what that means. However, episode 2 does offer some more surprises that I won't really get into at all, so no worries if you're trying to avoid spoilers. The real question I want to sort of ask, because I know a lot of my fans particularly are wondering, the biggest problem I had before even watching the show was the fact that Loki was supposed to be dead. They killed him at the end of Endgame, and then a time variant version of him collects the Tesseract as the Avengers are trying to get all the Power Stones, the Infinity Stones, and he sort of disappears, and we wonder, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, this show picks up immediately after that. In fact, the opening of the show replays that end scene from Endgame, and then we get to see where Loki lands, where he is pretty immediately apprehended by the TVA. Now, what is the TVA? The TVA is the Time Variance Authority. Basically, time cops. They are the time police. And so the show immediately takes place inside the offices of the TVA, where Loki, the god of mischief, is now stuck in this in-between time space of this authority, trying to keep track of the major, most important timeline is what the premise of this show is. So it's an interesting idea, and in order to do so, it has to explain a lot of stuff right out the gate. Now, that proceeds to my second question, but I want to make sure I address the first question of, it did seem like by bringing Loki right back alive after the end of Endgame, by having this variant version come off, that there would no longer be any stakes in the MCU. And is that actually a good thing to bring Loki back? Look, this show does justify why he's there and what they do with him in an interesting way that I have to admit, I don't know how many times they can do this again, but they definitely allow the explanation of the TVA and time variance and other things really do make a play into like, oh, okay, well, they really are trying to at least justify this. As long as this is the one instance, I think they've creatively justified a reason for having Loki be in this in-between space, working with the TVA. It does work for me right now. However, it's yet another, how many more times can we do this where a character doesn't actually die for real and there's a multiverse or time travel version of them popping back up? I do think will eventually get old. So Marvel has to be careful. For some, it's definitely going to be too much, for sure. For me, the show does creatively sort of justify and explain things where you're like, okay, well, at least they're telling me that. Now, that said, they explain a lot in episode 1. Episode 1 is really the exposition of how time travel works, or the time police, the time variance. All of that stuff is explained. There's even right here you can see the little clock is sort of like Mr. DNA, a character that sort of helps to explain what this all means, the rules to it. And the reality is I probably need to watch it again, and I'm going to watch it again live when it airs, but I want to watch it again to sort of really pick up all the little pieces, because I think they're trying their best to explain it, and I give them props for having the guts to just jump in the deep end right away. There's no like tiptoeing around it. No, we are now in a place called the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, which is basically time police, and they are protecting the timeline. And they need to make sure that nothing goes off the path and nobody has figured out a way to mess up with the timeline to then potentially wreck everything. The timeline is guarded by the timekeepers, who are these 3 sort of statues, these gods, if you will. I don't remember what they call them, but they are the keepers of time. And the TVA, here we are, TVA here, led by Mobius, is a sort of office setting where these sort of guards and higher ups have to protect the timeline at all costs. So how does that play into the show, and what does that mean? Well, Loki is brought in, the god of mischief, and immediately trying to get out and figure out how he can get back to his plans. But he sort of quickly realizes that this time world is actually pretty powerful in itself once he sort of comes to terms with it. And so Mobius here, while others are trying to sort of just eliminate this time variant of Loki, Mobius realizes there might be some potential to use him to solve some cases, etc., that they could use his help on. I'm not going to elaborate any further, but that's really the premise of the show, which you'll learn in episode 1 through all the exposition. I won't tell you what the missions are or anything else, but there's a lot of interesting ways they sort of get to justify all that. There's an opportunity between Mobius, who's fantastic. I have to give, here he is. Do I have that? Mobius, Owen Wilson, fantastic addition to the MCU. I loved his character. In fact, I think I like him more so far than Loki, because I like Loki, but Loki's doing his shenanigans. But what makes it so interesting is that Mobius, as a TVA agent, is able to sort of already know everything about Loki. He's able to watch his past, present, and future through the timeline that they can all sort of witness and watch, that he sort of knows Loki as well as Loki knows himself. So can Loki really get under his skin and trick him? It becomes a really interesting and fun dynamic between the two of them that creates the partnership, if you will, of who's playing who. You never really know, especially through episode 1 and episode 2, of who's really has the upper hand in this negotiation. Are they actually together? Are they playing each other? It's a really fun dynamic that you'll see. And I wish I did actually know a little bit more as I watched. I think the show will be better or worse, but I assume better on a rewatch, because there's just a lot of info that will be dumped onto you. And I could see some people having a problem with that, but I also understand why they need to do that. That said, they don't only just jump into, sort of this new world of TVA with all these new rules of time travel, etc. They also really establish a sort of a quirkier tone. The show is written and created by one of the writers of Rick and Morty, and the director, was it Kate? I forget the director, but she does her best to really do a quirky, different type of look. It definitely has a Doctor Whovian vibe, which it sounds weird for me because I don't like Doctor Who, but I there's definitely more of a sci-fi, a lot of discussions and deeper conversations about what the ethics and morals of time travel and just free will and all that stuff is definitely parlays into the show, which I did enjoy. I liked seeing Mobius and Loki have some deeper conversations rather than just get to the action. But I suspect those of you who are expecting a lot of action, you will be disappointed, at least in the first 2 episodes. There's moments, but this is more of a dialogue, exposition-heavy sci-fi show. That said, they don't keep a lot of mystery. They explain a lot of it right out the gate, unlike WandaVision, which to me held too close to the vest. This one really is starting to really explain a lot while still allowing for some higher-up moments that clearly haven't been revealed yet, that I actually enjoy it better. Compared to Falcon and Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier is definitely more by the books of character development. You're meeting these two guys going on a mission. This is, imagine that, but in a completely new sci-fi area there's a time police that's been monitoring everything and helping to keep track of things. What does that mean? What are the ramifications of that? That's what who are the timekeepers? What does all that mean? Really becomes the next question of, will this help or hurt the MCU ultimately? It's still hard to tell. By the end of episode 2, I'm not going to say anything. By the end of episode 2, sort of a little bit more of where this might be going. And I will say I'm intrigued and curious for sure. I'm not going to ruin any of the surprises of episode 2. But definitely, I want to see where this goes. Now, this could go somewhere really fun and exciting, or it could blow itself up and not make a lot of sense. We shall see how the whole 6 episodes plays out. But judging by the first 2, it is a very interesting attempt as a sort of standalone place where they can really do their own sort of thing. Where it goes will ultimately determine whether this worked or not in my mind. But as of right now, it's a fun, dialogue-heavy sci-fi premise with 2 wonderful actors, good supporting cast. Again, I have to focus mostly. Owen Wilson, such a surprise. It's what you expect from him, but he does this really clever character, and the back and forth between him and Tom Hiddleston is wonderful. I really liked it. So right now, I'm a fan. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I want to watch more. I could see this being polarizing for some thinking, well, damn, this is way too much explanation. This is boring. A lot of those could happen. I didn't find it that way. I was intrigued, and it carried me along to sort of want to see more. Now, will it all ultimately make sense that there have been timekeepers and people paying attention to the timeline? What does that mean for other things that happen through time travel? They do attempt to explain that. All that stuff could, in theory, blow up on itself. However, this was a run in the comics. The TVA is part of the comics, and this is something that has been done. So this does feel like they are trying to do a short-run little series, comic series, as a limited series. is a clever idea. Could there be more? We'll see how it all plays out. But right now, I'm invested. I'm intrigued. Two wonderful actors, and again, a good supporting cast all around as well. But I am intrigued to see where this goes. I want that variant jacket, and I want to see what happens to Loki here. The other question that it really does ask, which I think is an interesting one, which we'll see, is Loki a villain? Is he ultimately a bad guy? What are his goals? You really get to sort of ask those questions as you watch, particularly episode 1 and so on, as Loki gets to sort of learn about go back and replay some of the moments of his life. What do you think? Is Loki the bad guy or the good guy ultimately? What do you think? What do you think he'll do? That's the intrigue and fun potential of this show. I don't even think Loki knows. Some days he's seemingly good. Some days he wants to be bad. That's what makes him, I think, an interesting anti-hero villain. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for the show? What do you think? I want to hear your thoughts. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for me. Hit that bell for all alerts. And smash that like button. Leave a comment as well about the main topic here of, do you think the stakes are gone and or do you want to see how they justify bringing Loki back? And do you think this time travel, timekeepers, timeline, do you think that could be too much to bear of the MCU, or do you have faith? I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. It's Tuesday night. We'll be live, but we'll be live tonight at 10 p.m. So make sure to join us for our live stream. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on Popcorn